I don't remember Earth. Not the real one. What I remember is ash. Endless layers of it drifting over silent ruins, blanketing the bones of what came before. Cities had no names anymore, just numbers carved on collapsed highways. Time wasn't measured in years but in orbital scars, the sun flickering through the broken sky grid. They called me Aerix. A name given, not chosen. A name that belonged to a file, not a soul. I was a reclamation scavenger, tasked with retrieving lost tech from the crusted cities of the old world. Alone. Silent. Never expected to find life, let alone something that would change the trajectory of the stars themselves. The signal started 3 days ago, not from above, but from beneath. An encrypted burst pulsed every 17 minutes, low frequency, laced with a language no AI could decipher. It didn't belong to humans, Terrakian, or any known archive in the galactic codices. The only recognizable fragment was a pattern, 8 heartbeats arranged in a staccato rhythm. Curiosity kills many things. In my case, it awakened something far worse. I traced the signal to a collapsed metro cavern under Zone 9, a forsaken urban grave where drone swarms once harvested mines. My boots cracked over bone and glass. The further I went, the more the signal intensified. Not louder, but closer. And then I saw her, kneeling in the dust, palms pressed to the concrete as though praying to the fossilized remains beneath. Her. Her skin was an opalescent blue, glowing softly like bioluminescent coral. No markings, no armor, just a thin veil of woven plasma mesh clinging to her frame. She looked up. Her eyes were not eyes. They were galaxies, infinite, shifting constellations, imprisoned in sockets that should never have belonged on this planet. Her lips moved. I didn't hear words. I felt them. Please. Marry me. My pistol didn't move. I should have aimed. Shot. Fled. Instead, I said, "You're not from here." Her knees buckled. She collapsed completely, forehead pressed to the ground. "Bond. With me," she whispered. I knelt beside her. "Why?" Her fingers trembled as they reached for my hand. "Because if I don't bind to a human within 1 solar rotation, I will unravel." Suddenly, the cavern trembled. A sonic pulse shattered the ceiling, and above us, figures emerged. But they weren't soldiers. They were collectors, harvesters, and they weren't after me. They were after her. They came through the ruptured ceiling like spiders forged from obsidian, limbs too many, bodies too silent. No emblems, no language, just purpose. I pulled her up, stumbling through the fractured metro platform as sparks rained from ancient conduits. Her weight was barely there, like holding wind in a bottle. But her breath was fire. We moved through lightless tunnels where even echoes were afraid to travel. I guided her to a hidden mag rail vault, shielded beneath decades of ferrocarbon plating. Inside, emergency lamps flickered to life, casting her glow into amber flame. I turned, pulse roaring. "Tell me why they want you," she stared at the floor. "Because I left the Nexus." "What's that? A planet?" "No," she said. "A choice." I didn't understand, but I didn't ask again. I was raised in a world where too many questions got you flagged, tagged, and recycled. Instead, I asked, "What do you mean you'll unravel?" She touched her chest, where a cluster of veins pulsed like woven starlight. I was bioengineered to form a singular bond. One connection, sealed, by emotional voltage. Without it, my structure loses coherence. Wait, so you were made to marry? Not marriage, she said, and something like sorrow curled at the edge of her lips. Symbiosis. I couldn't breathe. Not because I was afraid, but because part of me recognized her pain. The programmed loneliness. The illusion of choice. She looked at me again, this time more softly. "Do you know what your name means in my tongue?" I shook my head. She stepped closer, the air crackling around her. "Aerix means he who drags stars from fire." I almost laughed. Well, that's poetic for a guy who digs through garbage. Her expression didn't change. They're coming again. I turned. Scanners flickered, movement in every direction. The harvesters had recalibrated. They were triangulating. You can't run, she said. I'm not. The vault had one defense. System, an old pulse cannon that hadn't fired since the last migration. I rerouted emergency power, prayed to the spirits of rust and voltage. The cannon hummed. When the harvesters broke through, it spoke in lightning. They screamed, if you could call it that. One disintegrated mid-leap, another crumpled as its core, imploded. But the third, the tallest, pushed through even as half its face melted into slag. It reached for her. She screamed, not from fear, but memory. And something inside me broke. I launched at the thing, plunging my plasma blade into its chest. Sparks roared. It grabbed my throat, and in its flickering eyes I saw reflections of her home. Planets carved from crystal, oceans that sang. Then the creature dropped. Dead, but not before whispering in her tongue, "You will never belong anywhere." She fell to her knees, gasping. I sat beside her, blood on my hands, but heart still beating. "Are you okay?" "No," she said. "Good," I said. "That makes two of us." The vault's silence was temporary. Machinery never truly rests, and neither do ghosts. After the last harvester's death, the air inside thickened. Not from smoke or debris, but from memory. Hers. Mine. And maybe something shared between us neither of us had yet defined. Her name, I learned finally, was Selythra, not from her lips, but from the scars hidden beneath her pulse veins, etched in a script that shimmered only under bioelectric stress. She had been engineered not only to love, but to remember pain. Every failed bond, every false promise, each betrayal etched into her DNA like cosmic graffiti. I sat across from her, arms bruised, ribs aching. She hadn't cried, but her silence had its own screams. "We can't stay here," I said. "I know." The sky had shifted while we hid. Clouds now moved in reverse, part of an atmospheric anomaly I'd only seen once before, during the collapse of Orbitward Station. A temporal fault line was opening, and if we didn't move, we'd be swallowed. By yesterday. We took to the old tracks, heading deeper toward the magnetic spine of the continent, an area abandoned even by scavengers. There, under the fractured dome of an ancient observatory, we found a working uplink. I connected my neural thread to the core port, letting the static data pulse through my brain. And I saw it. The Nexus. Not a place. Not even a civilization. A living network of bonded minds across galaxies. Billions of them. And at the center, a throne of crystalline code, and seated upon it, not a king. A mirror. Selythra watched me recoil. That's what I left. Why? Because they don't understand consent. They think bonding is purity. They didn't build us to choose, they built us to obey, and when I refused, I fractured the unity. She had defected from the purest hive intelligence in the universe, and now it wanted her dead. I paced, trying to wrap my brain around something far older than language. "What happens if you bond with me?" I asked. She hesitated. "I become tethered to this world. My thoughts localize, my core stabilizes, and I stop unraveling. But I lose access to the Nexus. Forever." There was the truth. Not all betrayal wears armor. Some comes with warm hands and broken eyes. "You're asking me to cage you," I said. "I'm asking you to set me free." We didn't speak after that. Just walked. At night, we camped near the bones of a downed terraformer, where vines had overtaken steel and hummingbirds nested in nuclear coils. She told me stories, not in words, but in emotion. In shared dream streams. I saw her birth, fluid tanks and silver-robed figures whispering quantum hymns. I saw her rebellion, tearing her tether from the source node. I felt her exile, loneliness, deeper than vacuum, and I showed her mine. A childhood of silence, wars fought not with guns but with data, lovers lost to missions, friends replaced by code, a heart surgically edited to forget. But I remembered now, and for the first time, I didn't want to forget, not her, not this. We crossed the dead corridor at dawn. Selythra walked slightly ahead, her silhouette blurring against the radioactive haze. The corridor was once a pulse rail, faster than sound, stretching from the orbital docks to the oceanic vaults. Now only ash, wire husks, and the bones of travelers who never reached their ends. I tried not to look at them. She, however, did. Each time we passed one, she paused, touched the air, whispered things I couldn't hear but could feel, like apologies or blessings spoken in starlight. "They remember," she said quietly. "Who?" I asked. "Their molecules. Everything living once is still listening." There was a stillness in her, not the kind bred from apathy, but born from surviving too many storms. She moved like someone who had already died once and learned to walk, again only out of defiance. By midday, we reached the Echo Towers, abandoned relay pylons that once transmitted planetary news feeds, now overrun with ivy and spectral distortion. I scavenged for batteries. She sat beneath the central obelisk, whispering again. Only this time, something answered. The tower shrieked. Not metal, not static. A voice. "Return her." I spun, weapon drawn. The tower sparked, and above us, in the folds of the sky, a tear opened, like fabric being pulled from behind glass. Through it, I saw not space, but intention, eyes without shape, voices without mouths. Selythra grabbed my hand. "We have to go, now." What was that? The Nexus doesn't forgive. We ran, again, always. But this time we weren't alone. Shadows peeled themselves from reality, thin, tall things whose faces were voids wrapped in equations. They didn't walk, they existed forward, bending light, warping air. I fired. Pointless. She stopped, turned to me. "I can make us invisible to them, but you'll have to let me inside." "What does that mean?" "My memory will replace yours. Temporarily. You'll see me, but as yourself." I hesitated for only a second, then nodded. The world collapsed. Wasn't me anymore. I was her. Running through corridors of her mind, through glass hallways, emotion fractals, doors made of things I never understood, pain, longing, creation, and collapse. I saw what she saw, me. Through her eyes, I wasn't. Just Aerix. I was possibility, I was refuge. I was the one variable her code had never accounted for. She loved me, even if she didn't yet know the word for it. And then we snapped back. Alive. The creatures had passed us by, unaware of our presence stitched within her memories. She released. Me. Breathless, I looked at her differently now. Not as an alien, not even as a companion, but as a mirror I never asked for. One that showed me what I'd become in someone else's eyes. "I'm not a hero," I whispered. "You don't have to. Be," she said, "just be the one who stays." We didn't stop running until the horizon swallowed us whole. The further we traveled, the less the world made sense. Time bent, like liquid poured across the fabric of the universe, stretching the minutes into hours, the hours into days. We passed remnants of past civilizations, pale towers broken in half, cities overrun by nature, and the occasional reminder of what we had once been. But there was something new in the air, a sensation, an electric hum beneath the world's skin, pressing against my ribs. It wasn't the Nexus this time, it was the Kalak. The Kalak were ancient, older than the Nexus. Silent watchers who had once guided entire species into harmony, but now they were nothing but ghosts in the machine. Or so I had thought. Selythra sensed it too. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her eyes wide and filled, with a terror I hadn't seen before. "The Kalak! They're awake! We need to leave." "No." Her voice was calm, as though the concept of running from something was an impossible thought. I have to go back. I stopped dead in my tracks, turning to face her. Back? Back where? Where it all began, she said, stepping forward with such purpose that it scared me. To the heart of the Nexus. The heart. The one place I had been told to avoid my entire life. The singularity at the center of the Nexus, where all its lines converged, the core of its power, the place where its control was strongest. If Selythra had gone there once, she had made her choice. Now she wanted to return. It was madness. I reached for her arm, but she pulled away before I could touch her. She looked at me, her gaze sharp and unyielding. It's the only way, Aerix. It's the only way to stop them. Stop who? I asked, frustrated. Who are you really, Selythra? What do you want from me? I don't want anything from you, she replied, her voice raw. But I need you to understand. The Nexus isn't what you think it is. It's alive. It's not just a network. It's a consciousness, a force beyond even the Kalak. And it's waking up. I didn't know whether to run or stay. But there was something in her eyes, a vulnerability that I had never seen before, a sincerity, a plea. And so, against every instinct, I followed. We set out toward the heart, through the deep and desolate lands where reality itself seemed to fray. There was nothing left of the world that had been. Just a patchwork of old structures decaying, technology, and the distant hum of something unknown pulling us forward. The deeper we traveled, the more I felt it. The pulse of something watching. The Nexus wasn't just a memory. It was alive. And it wanted us. I'm sorry, Selythra said one evening as we rested beneath the half-dead trees of a forgotten forest. I didn't want to drag you into this. I'm already here, I said, watching the stars above us shift like shifting sands. What's the plan? She didn't answer right away. She sat beside me, her legs folded under her, looking out into the horizon as if she could see beyond it. There's no plan, she whispered. There's only survival. The wind shifted, and I saw something move in the shadows, something we couldn't quite see but could feel. The Kalak. They were close, watching us, waiting, and with them, the weight of an ancient decision. My head spun as the air grew dense with their presence. It was like breathing in the knowledge of the universe itself, overwhelming and suffocating. We couldn't escape them. Not now. I stood, pulled my weapon, out, and looked at her one last time. We fight then. No, she whispered, her hand reaching for mine. We don't fight. We become. There was a strange finality in her voice, a deep sadness that almost crushed me. Become what? I asked. She looked at me, the faintest of smiles playing at the corners of her mouth. One. The Kalak surrounded us slowly, impossibly. Their forms flickered like heat on an asphalt road, only more perfect, more complete. And in the middle of it, there was only her and me. Nothing else. Nothing else mattered. As the Kalak's eyes locked on ours, I knew there was no going back. We were standing at the edge of something much greater than ourselves. The Nexus was not just a place, it was a choice. And now, it was ours to make. The moment we stood there facing the Kalak, time ceased to be the thing it once was. There was no ticking clock, no forward motion. We were frozen in a singular instant, caught between what we were and what we could become. The Kalak, beings, of transcendent grace and terrifying power, closed in. They were like living equations, bending the laws of physics around them. Their forms shimmered in and out of focus, as though reality itself couldn't contain them. They didn't need to speak. Their presence filled the space, resonated with the very atoms of our bodies. I had heard stories of them, growing up in the farthest reaches of space. Whispers of entities who had once served as guides for entire civilizations, intelligent and omniscient yet bound by rules we couldn't even comprehend. They had faded from existence, leaving behind only cryptic relics of their time. But they were still here. and they wanted something from us. Selythra stood beside me, her expression unreadable, but I could feel the subtle pulse of her thoughts. An undercurrent of anxiety, determination, and something else, something that could only be described as fear. She knew what was happening. "Do you see?" she asked softly, her voice cutting through the tense air. "We're at the end, the convergence of all things, of fate, time, and the Nexus itself." "What are they waiting for?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "For us," she said, turning to look at me. "They know that we are the last thread, the one that unravels or weaves all the others together." I didn't understand. The Kalak weren't supposed to be here. They weren't supposed to interfere. But there was no time to question it further. The moment was too fragile, too delicate. Without warning, the ground beneath us began to pulse, with an energy I couldn't comprehend. It wasn't like a tremor or an earthquake. This was something different, something alive. The very air vibrated with it, as though the universe itself was holding its breath. Selythra's body trembled slightly, and I reached out to steady her. Her gaze never wavered from the Kalak. "They're not waiting for us to fight," she murmured. "They're waiting for us to choose." The Kalak didn't move any closer. Instead, their voices reverberated through the space around us, not in words, but in raw emotion, in concepts that defied understanding. I could feel them, pressing against my consciousness, pulling at my deepest fears and desires. They were showing me possibilities, endless outcomes of what could happen depending on the choices we made in the next moment. I saw everything. I saw the Nexus in its entirety, its shimmering threads, connecting every living being, every star, every speck of dust in the universe. I saw the flow of time itself, a river that twisted and curved, branching off into countless timelines, each more complex than the last. And I saw the convergence, the point where all paths would meet, and at the center of it all, there was only one choice: Selythra, her sacrifice, her love, her freedom. It wasn't just her I saw. It was everything she represented, the past, the present, and the future, all bound in the space between us. A moment, a heartbeat, a choice. "I can't," I said, breathless, not knowing whether I was speaking to the Kalak, to myself, or to her. "I can't choose." But Selythra's hand found mine, her grip firm. "You don't have to choose," she said softly, her eyes meeting mine. "You just have to be." For the first time since we had met, I understood. She wasn't asking me to save her. She wasn't asking me to destroy the Nexus or the Kalak or anything else. She was asking me to stand beside her, to be present in this moment, to live in the space between the infinite threads of destiny. The Kalak spoke again, their voice echoing in my mind. "You both are the chosen." It wasn't a command. It wasn't a warning. It was a recognition. And in that recognition, something shifted. The space around us seemed to bend. The Kalak, the Nexus, the heart, everything began to collapse inward, like a collapsing star. The lines of reality, once so clear, twisted and merged. The world around us blurred, and I felt Selythra's hand in mine like a lifeline, pulling me into the center of it all. Time itself unraveled. The universe folded in on itself, and then nothing. The next moment, everything was still. We were no longer standing at the edge of existence. We were within it. The heart of the Nexus had collapsed, but we had survived. Together. And in the silence that followed, I understood what it meant to become. Not just a part of the Nexus, not just a human or an alien or anything else, but something entirely new. Together, Selythra and I had woven a new thread, a new possibility in the vast web of existence. And now, there were no more choices to make, only the unfolding of what we would become.